You're Free to Go is sponsored by Milburn Men's Clothing, where top athletes shop for sharp, tailored style. And whether Mark and I are in the studio or the courtroom, Milburn dresses us for success. Mention YFTG and get 10% off at Milburn Men's Clothing, which has been providing the finest in men's clothing and suits since 1946. Call 651-645-2922 or visit www.milburn.com. Hey everybody, welcome back to the next episode of You're Free to Go. We're glad you're here with us today, and I think we have a really good episode for you that you're going to enjoy. I have no doubt about that. This is the episode where you hear from real lawyers about our real criminal cases. It's truly an inside look at the criminal justice system, a look that you only get from the perspective of the criminal defense lawyer who actually handles the cases and addresses the court and meets with the client and handles the evidence and cross-examines witnesses and so forth. This is the inside look that everyone wants to hear about, and that's what this show, You're Free to Go, is going to bring to you today and every day in all of our episodes. So happy to be here with Mark back in the studio, who has been in LA for our last 3 episodes, and now he's back with us in Florida.
Good to be back in the heat.
Yeah, right. The perfect weather of California. You're like, right. What am I doing here? Hey, maybe we can get our engineer Ben to move to LA with you, and then we'll start recording there.
That'd be a good idea.
I'm sure he'll say yes to that. What do you think we should start with, Mark?
I think we should start with, we're talking about our crazy-ass cases.
Yes.
And I think we should start with some of our crazy-ass shorts.
All
the
right.
little sort of mini cases.
Yeah, like a vignette.
Vignettes, exactly.
Well, this is apropos because I had one come in this week. And, you know, our cases always strike a chord with us, but this one is really weighing heavily on me. It really touched a part of my heart. I got a call about a 92-year-old lady. Believe it or not, the call came from a police officer. He said, this was on Monday, he said he knows me, he's a friend on the, but we, you know, you and I have a lot of friends on the police side of things because we've been dealing with them, cross-examining them for years, and when they need a lawyer, they hire us. So anyway, he calls me, he says, Guy, I need your help. I'm like, what? He said, I have a arrest warrant in my hand. I'm at the lady's door. She opens the door. It turns out she's 92 years old.
Oh, my God.
Right? And he's going to take her to jail. He's like, we don't want this lady in the jail. I can't take her to jail.
What'd she do?
He said she wrote a bad check. So on top of that, like, I'm going to take her to jail for a bad check at 92 years old. She has a walker. She's hunched over, like 5 feet tall or maybe even shorter. She's like, come on, you got to get the prosecutor to withdraw this warrant as quickly as possible. I'm going to walk away for a few hours. Hopefully you can do your magic, and then I'll be back. So for the next few hours, I'm talking to the prosecutor, I'm talking to the judge, getting an order to get signed to recall the warrant. Meanwhile, I get a call from a rabbi. The rabbi calls me, says, yeah, so-and-so, Mrs. So-and-so is a member of our congregation, and she's about to be arrested. Can you help her? I said, Rabbi, it's your lucky day. The police already called me, which he couldn't believe. So you'll never believe what she got arrested for, what her bad check was for. She had just recently, at 92 years old, gone to a dermatologist to get Botox. And she bounced the check to the dermatologist.
And the dermatologist reported her?
Yeah, he filed a bad check.
He should have been arrested for giving Botox to a 92-year-old.
That's exactly what great minds think alike, Mark. That's what I thought when she started telling me the story and the police officer read me the report. I'm like, are you kidding? A doctor is giving Botox to a 92-year-old? On one hand, I applaud her for wanting to look her finest, even at 92. Anyway, I get the warrant recalled, and I start talking to this nice lady on the phone, and she's very alert, very smart. And she says to me, and, you know, by the way, I'm a Holocaust survivor. I'm like, oh my God, it's unbelievable. You know, do you have any support from the Holocaust Society, you know, in the United States? They have programs for that. And she says, oh, absolutely. I'm registered with the Jewish Federation Holocaust Department, and they do provide services to me. And she gives me the name of the person there, the director, and I call him, and he confirms. And it's an open case, so I'm not going to say too much more, but we're very lucky because there is a budget to help pay the restitution of this bad check. The guy charged $4,400 for Botox on a 92-year-old. Fortunately, there are support that's going to pay for that, and you know we do these cases sometimes pro bono, and this case is perfect to do.
Oh my God,
yeah,
that's crazy.
Right, yeah.
Crazy that somebody should be arrested for something like that. But it shows you, you know, the cop was smart.
Yes.
He had a heart,
yeah, he did.
And he realized this would be an embarrassing situation to take this woman into jail.
Absolutely. And he felt, like you said, he had a heart. He felt bad taking a 92-year-old who'd never been in trouble before to the jail.
Well, I have one very similar.
No way.
In fact, it also involves a Holocaust survivor.
Oh, what did he say?
Husband and wife, Holocaust survivors, were getting reparation payments from the German government. It was some kind of fund that was set up to pay reparations for Holocaust survivors.
Sure.
They were both young children at the time in the camps, and they were liberated by the Allies. So it turns out her husband dies, but she keeps cashing his checks.
Oh, boy. They're both getting checks. And
They're
now
both getting checks, and it's not a big amount, trust me. Well, it turns out that I guess the fund administrator or the German government, I'm not sure, contacted the Justice Department, said, we want to look into making sure everybody who's getting and cashing these checks is still alive, because these people are by now very old. And lo and behold, they do this audit, and they discover that he died a number of years ago.
Wow.
So next thing you know, the U.S. Attorney's Office is being pressured now to charge her with a crime. So she's actually charged in a criminal complaint with a theft.
Is that federal, Mark?
Well, because it was done through the mails,
okay.
So it's a mail fraud.
Right. So.
And it wasn't a great amount, but she gets charged, and I get a call one day from the FBI agent, just like the cop you had, and he says, I'm with this woman. Apparently she was given your name by a friend or a relative, and she wants to talk to you. And I talked to her, and the FBI agent explains to me everything's going on, and he doesn't want to do anything. He does not want to arrest her.
Of course not.
Of course, but he has no choice. There's already an existing complaint, an existing warrant.
He has to do his job.
Right.
Yeah.
So I talked to her, and I asked her, what happened? And she basically tells me, and this was told to the government, so it was not betraying any attorney-client privilege. She basically said, yeah. And, I would take every dollar I can from those bastards. So anyway.
And I'm sure a lot of people would agree with her on
yes.
that. Yeah.
And as it turns out, the way the fund worked, she wasn't taking money out of somebody else's pocket.
Right.
If more money was needed, the German government was providing it. So by her cashing his check, she wasn't denying anybody else anything, which was an important point. So one day I get a call from the U.S. attorney handling the case. He says, well, we're either going to indict her or we're going to work out a plea. I don't want to handle this case, he said.
Good.
And I said, well, I'll tell you what. I've been looking for a case like this my whole life. Please indict her, because my opening statement to the jury will be, I'm going to play Schindler's List.
Oh, yeah.
The movie.
Right.
He said, please, Mark, let's work something out.
We talked about jury pardons, I think, in a different
that would
episode.
Have been a jury pardon.
Exactly. Yeah.
So anyway, the bottom line is, what happened is we worked out a deal, and this is sort of an inside thing people don't know about. Even within the federal system, you have the opportunity to do what they call a diversionary arrangement. Right. In this case, what happens, she's put on like a diversion program for a length of time, and if she doesn't have any other criminal issues, the case goes away.
Right. It's kind of like a probation.
Right.
And you do everything you're supposed to do, and if you successfully complete it, the case goes away.
But we agreed that we would make the probation, the diversion program 30 days.
Oh.
Given her age.
Right. Yeah.
30 days.
Hopefully she lasted all 30 days. Okay,
so what happens is we have this agreement, and we go in front of a judge. The judge has to bless it. The judge didn't understand. He thought she was pleading guilty. Uh-huh. He starts taking a plea. And I had to interrupt him. I said, Judge, no. This is 30-day in this diversion.
That's because they very rarely see that in federal court.
They never
it's
see
a deal that you worked out that's
30 days?
You're right,
Come
it's
on.
unheard of.
30 days and the case goes away?
That judge's expected to ever see.
So we finally work it out. And then afterwards, I said to her, you're not going to cash any more checks?
You better not.
And she gave me a wink.
Hopefully she never called you back for more representation.
No, there was never any problem. But it just goes to show you, sometimes people get caught up. You cast the big net out there, You can get the big fish, but sometimes you get the little minnows.
That's for sure. Yep. Well, glad these two cases worked out for our clients. That's for
Right.
sure. Well, we're going to talk about crazy. Those are crazy ass shorts. I think that's
Right.
what we're going to call them in our You're Free to Go episodes. Crazy ass shorts, and then we have our crazy ass cases, which are a little longer, more than just a vignette.
Right.
Yeah. So which one do you want to talk
Well,
about
you
today?
actually, I was fascinated by the Goodman case.
Yes.
I remember I was here at the time, and it was a really an amazing case. Everybody was following. I think the interest was because he was a wealthy guy.
Yes.
So why don't you
Yeah.
lead off with that?
Well, the good thing about this case and any of our really high-profile cases, they're all in the news. So if someone wants to spend a day or two or three digging through court records and deposition transcripts, they're going to see a lot, really everything. So we're not, the issue of attorney-client privilege and confidentiality isn't as concerning because it's all out there in public
Right.
record already. So we're able to use his real name and so forth. Obviously, when we talk about cases that were not in the news, we always change the names. We even
Right.
change dates, locations, just to make sure that there's no connection to an attorney-client privilege communication being revealed. So we're able to talk about a lot with John Goodman because, as you said, it was very high profile. And by the way, for our listeners and viewers, this is not the actor John Goodman. This is John Goodman, who was from Texas, and he started a air condition company, and he built it up from scratch, and he sold it for, it was called Goodman Air Condition. He sold it for around $1.4 billion.
It's a lot of air conditioning.
Very, very successful man. I mean, to get into detail, the little minutia, his father was in the air-conditioned duct business, and John saw an opportunity to bring air conditions, not just the ducts, to areas around the equator that were really hot, that actually had an economy and could afford air conditions but didn't have air conditions.
Mm-hmm.
So he took the duct business, bought a air conditioning company out of bankruptcy, and started marketing to all those places around the equator and built up this amazing air conditioning
So
company.
how did he become your client? What did he do?
Well, unfortunately, he was charged with DUI manslaughter and leaving the scene of an accident. John, as I mentioned, is a billionaire. He was a polo mogul. He was known in the U.S. He owned the U.S. National Polo Championship and the U.S. Polo Fields in Palm Beach, which is like the Four Seasons of horse stables and fields. It's really, really remarkable. I'd never seen anything like it when I met him. After he got arrested, I was flown in by helicopter, landed on his property. It had to be at least 500 acres, maybe 1,000 acres. It was huge, with about 10 polo fields. He had a monster house on it. And I met him after he got out of jail after being arrested. What happened is he never drives, ever. He has a driver. And that driver was out that night because it was his daughter was flying in to visit, so he took the night off. John has a backup plan with a contract with a car service that was going to pick him up and take him to a fundraiser. The car service didn't show up, and he didn't want to be late to the fundraiser, so he decided he would drive himself. He had a convertible Bentley, brand new, had maybe driven it once because usually his driver, he literally drives once or twice a year, that's it.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, and this night, because of those two, errors, he wound up driving. So he goes to the fundraiser, and it's at a bar, and they have with food and drinks and so forth, a club, and they raise a lot of money. He helps, he donates a lot and so forth. And then on his way home, he's driving his convertible Bentley. He runs a stop sign, and the expression in car accidents, T-bone, maybe sounds insensitive, but that's just the term that is used. He T-boned a car, and that car went into a canal. The autopsy showed that the driver drowned. He didn't die.
Oh, my God, what a shame.
Yeah, he didn't die from the impact, but he died from drowning, which is really actually a significant fact as I discuss it more. He was a young boy who had just graduated from University of Central Florida in Orlando, and he was coming home, literally just graduated, an engineering student, was coming home to surprise his sister
God,
for her
what a
birthday.
shame.
That night he was going to surprise her for her birthday when this accident happened. So what happened is John's car, because it was such a significant accident, his car was destroyed. The engine turns off. It can't be restarted. Airbags are out and so forth. I think we all know when airbags come out, your car will not restart. And there's evidence that his cell phone battery was dead. However, there's evidence that he tried to make a call. It went through to his girlfriend, and then the battery went dead, maybe 1 second into the call. It was an issue that his first call wasn't to the police and so forth, but He was calling for help no matter who he called. He gets out of his car and he walks in this area. It's out in Wellington, Florida, which is where all these beautiful horse stables. Bill Gates' daughter has a home out there and so forth. All these very high-end, I think Bruce Springsteen's daughter has a home with horses. And on the perimeter of the road, it's very soft, thick sand leading up to the canal where the car went in. You can see John, who wears cowboy boots. You see his footprints all the way up to the canal, and then you see them walk away from the canal. So the presumption from the prosecutor's side is that he walked up, saw the car in the canal, and then decided to leave. There's always an argument, by the way, it was late at night after a fundraiser, it was dark. It's in the country, so there's not a lot of lights. So there's the argument that he didn't know if he hit a deer, maybe hit an 18-wheeler that just kept going or what, but by walking to the canal, he must have known he could see a car in there. So he walks away. To me, what's significant is at one point, the first car that comes on, John's gone, by the way, is off-duty EMT, an emergency rescue fireman. And I asked him in deposition and in a trial, why didn't you jump in the canal? And he said, well, there's alligators in the canal. I didn't have my gear with me. It wasn't safe. It was dark. I didn't have searchlights and so forth. And I always felt it was difficult to find John Goodman guilty of not jumping in to rescue the driver if a trained, fireman, EMT wouldn't go in the canal either, right? But anyway, that was an issue ultimately that the jury struggled with. So normally this would be a serious, obviously, case that was newsworthy. And it was a little more newsworthy because he was a billionaire. But what made it international news is that at one point during the case, John adopted his adult girlfriend, fiance. All comments regarding adoption, finances, a trust, and trust strategies are supposition from public record and not part of the criminal defense representation or attorney-client privilege.
What?
Yes, his adult girlfriend, fiance. And when this adult man adopts his adult girlfriend, fiance, adopts as a child, it made international news. The world couldn't understand what was happening. So, to be sensitive to personal information, even though it's all out there in the public record, all I'll say is there was a strategic reason that helped him get access to his estate. When rich people sell businesses and they have children, they put money in trusts. And if you have two children and the children get the trust, it's usually 50% for one child, 50% for the other child. So when John, who managed a trust, got arrested, it put into question, whether his mind was focused on his criminal defense and keeping himself out of prison, or was it focused on managing the trust in a very effective way for his children? So his wife, the mother of his children, John's ex-wife, challenged him being the head of that trust, and so there was an opportunity for him to adopt his girlfriend, fiance, so that she would then get a 1/3 interest in a trust. That made international news, which a lot of people think when you have a rich person, a famous person, it makes our job easier, but it's the exact opposite, as you know. Now the prosecutor knows everyone's watching this case, and if the prosecutor goes easy on it, the whole world is going to call the prosecutor's office and file come. Why'd you go easy on that person? So they usually go harder. The best thing we can do is keep our cases out of the news.
Now, what makes it a DUI manslaughter is the contention that the state has to prove that he was impaired.
Right.
So where did the evidence for that come from?
Okay, so what's interesting, he was at a fundraiser. Part of the fundraiser was to buy drinks, and the money all went to the fundraiser, the charity. The bill that John, the evidence presented a bill that he had $800 in drinks. It was, like 60 drinks or something like that. Obviously, he didn't drink all those drinks. The evidence was also that he was passing those drinks out, but the government said, well, maybe he drank 10 of those and passed out. Right. So what happened is we argued, hey, the valet parker saw him, gave him his car keys, pulled up the car, gave him the car. They didn't think he was too impaired to drive. They thought he was fine, or they wouldn't have given the car to him. He has the accident shortly after getting the car from valet, and he leaves the scene. He walks away from the scene.
And where does he go?
So in that area, there's all these very wealthy barns. Wealthy people have these big, fancy, over-the-top barns like I had never seen. And the properties are, 10 acres, 20 acres. They're huge. Wow. So he walks several properties down, and he sees the property of a friend of his that he's been to before. And he knows above the stables, which again looked like a Four Seasons or Ritz-Carlton. There's a man cave. He's been at it. He's had poker games there with his buddy who owns these stables. And he figures, I'll go up there. I know the door's always unlocked. I'll use the phone. I'll call the police. He goes in there, and sure enough, there's no phone. Nowadays, I guess most people don't have landlines anymore. But the door is unlocked, and he's in tremendous pain. He's seriously injured. He has a broken wrist. He has broken ribs. He has a huge, like those big eggs, on his forehead where he hit the steering wheel. Goose egg, I guess it's called. She's in a lot of pain, and he has a bar in this man cave, and he starts drinking for the pain, has a bunch of drinks, and then he leaves, and he's working his way back to the scene. Now all the police are there, of course, and he surrenders, and they arrest him. They take his blood. The legal limit in Florida is 0.08.
That's most places.
Right. I remember when I was in law school, it was 0.12, and then when I started as a prosecutor, it came down to 0.10, then now it's 0.08.
People don't realize you could easily blow a 0.08. You may not feel impaired.
That's right.
But if you get stopped and blood is taken or you go through a breathalyzer, you could wind up easily meeting the 0.08.
Right. It's a very low threshold.
Right.
So, and, a 0.08 on you might not affect you, but it might affect me or vice versa.
Right.
So, anyway, so the law in Florida is 0.08. His breath was a 0.16. Mm-hmm. So he was double the legal limit. And it's great that you asked that question because that ties into our defense. At the trial, the defense was what I call, and I think there's some other lawyers that call, the Rick Sanchez defense. Rick Sanchez is a very famous journalist. He started out in Miami as a local journalist.
I remember that. He was on TV.
Yeah, right. A commentator on the news and so forth, an anchor. And then he became national anchor, one of the major networks. I forget which one. The reason it's called the Rick Sanchez defense is because Rick Sanchez was leaving a Miami Dolphin football game once. And when he was leaving, he hit somebody. The person didn't die, but they were seriously injured. He left the scene and came back. And he said he left to go get his driver's license that he left at home. And he said, while I was home, I had a couple drinks. I was so upset. So when he came back, all the police could do was get him for DUI. They couldn't get him for DUI, serious bodily accident causing serious bodily injury, because the law, as you know, says at the time of driving, were you impaired? So they couldn't prove that the time of driving where he hit this pedestrian leaving the Miami Dolphin football game that he was impaired because he left the scene and came back. So he used his defense that after the accident, that's when I drank. So my blood, you can't tell me what my blood alcohol was during the accident, but you can get me for DUI when I came back because I had all those drinks at home. So the same thing here. Our argument was that at the time of the accident, we don't know what he was drinking. They didn't get to him till about 2 hours later. And at that point, he admitted he had a bunch of drinks up in the man cave of the stables of his friend's property. So we had the Rick Sanchez defense. The case had so many tentacles to it, though. We had a change of venue issue because it was so high profile, and it was not only in the news nationally and internationally, but really hardcore in South Florida.
I remember,
every day, almost as much as your Scott Rothstein case, like every day front page news.
Well, people are fascinated, and also there's a degree of resentment when you're dealing with very wealthy people as clients. A lot of the jurors, there's a sense that wealthy people get off easier, and to some degree they're able to get out of situations. But like in your case, because it's so famous, the prosecutor's not going to give up.
Yeah, the advantage of a wealthy person is that they can afford to get the best attorneys, a whole team of attorneys. They can pay to look under every rock and turn over every stone. So, they can have a lot more work put into their case, but they're never getting a benefit, a special break because they're famous. It's actually the opposite, as we just talked about earlier. So what was the next thing that was about this jury, change of venue? We're like, how are we going to get a neutral or fair jury pool here in Palm Beach County? I mean, this was a young boy, that died. A lot of people knew him. It was, really just devastating that he left there. He's accused of leaving the scene. That hurts a lot. So we asked to change venue, and the judge actually, in a second trial, which I'll explain in a minute, agreed to have the jurors picked out of Tampa.
So what happened in the first trial?
So the first trial, he was found guilty.
And then how did you wind up with the second trial?
So it was great. The first trial, the jury was out for several days. It was a long trial, actually, a couple of weeks long. for a DUI. That's a long trial. And then the jury was out several days. They did come back guilty. And I got to take a step back because, these things, as you know, this is a chess game for us when we play these, when we, prepare a trial and so strategize for how to lay out the trial. This strategy was, we had a tough case. We do, in these trials, we'll often do mock jury trials or focus groups. We had tried this case in front of several juries, privately, and, to see what defenses would work and what was not. And we had a tough case. The evidence was overwhelming that he was impaired. We knew going into it that we needed to find a juror that could maybe be a crazy juror, a wild card, so to speak. So we hired a specific jury consultant out of New York, came into South Florida, and we said, look, we got to pick a good jury, and we need probably to have someone on there that's a wild card in case we get the guilty verdict, which we're very likely to get. And so sure enough, we got that guilty verdict, and we immediately used our private investigator to start looking at all the jurors. And as it turns out, we were right about this one juror who we put on the jury was a wild jury. He did everything you're not supposed to do, and therefore I was able to file a motion for a new trial based on jury misconduct, and I won and got a new trial. So, for example, one of the questions I asked during voir dire is, have you or anyone in your family ever been accused of a DUI? And he answered no. It turned out that his wife had been accused of a DUI. And it turned out not only did she get accused of a DUI and prosecuted for it, but when she went to DUI driving school, she met a man in the DUI driving school class who she wound up leaving her husband for this guy she met in DUI school and divorced her husband who was on the jury. And he said, no, I don't know anyone that has a DUI. Right? So he clearly has a bias about DUI cases. He said, has anyone in your family ever been a victim of a crime? He said, no. It turned out that his daughter, his son-in-law, and his grandchildren had been the victims of a home invasion. And the trial had just taken place in Boston 3 months earlier, and he sat through the whole trial. And he didn't tell us that. There were a couple other things, and also that he misrepresented during voir dire. We've talked about, we had a whole, I think a whole episode and a half on jury selection and juries and so forth. So our listeners know voir dire, the question and answer to tell the truth, speak the truth. So there were other things he didn't represent accurately. But there are things, as we know, that the judge tells the jury they can do and not do. For example, you can't go to the scene of the crime.
He went to the scene?
He went to the scene.
Uh-huh.
You're only allowed on the jury to factor in all the evidence that's entered in the courtroom in the trial. You can't go do, the judge says you can't do your own research, don't talk to other people about the case, don't watch the news about the case, don't go to the scene of the crime. He did all of the above. We found out our private investigator was looking at all the jurors, but zoned in on this one because we had a feeling he was the wild card we left on the jury. And so sure enough, all these things come to light. It also found out that he told someone before he got subpoenaed for jury duty. He knew when he was showing up for it that there was a good chance it would be for this trial because it was all over the news. He told someone, I'm going to make sure I'm on this jury because I'm going to write a book about it.
Oh, that's a killer.
Yeah, so the whole time on the jury, he's writing a book.
So you got the case reversed.
You got the case
reversed. You got a new trial. What happened in the second trial?
So, it's not unusual for a defendant to want to switch their defense team.
Oh, so that's when he hired Roy?
I was Roy Black, who's we all maybe you and I both know a lot. Most people in this country know is one of the world-renowned best criminal defense lawyers.
Roy,
so we've both been fortunate to handle cases with him. One of the best attorneys in the history of criminal defense. So he was on the team with me to begin with.
We got to get Roy to pay us for that plug.
Yes, yeah. So he will. He's maybe we'll get him on here one day.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah. So anyway, the second trial they decided to go with a different team. That jury came back in about 9 minutes. 8 or 9 minutes, I forget, but I remember hearing an interview with the foreperson. They said it took 7 minutes to vote me, the foreperson, 1 minute to vote guilty. So
the second team, first team was you, Roy, and some other people.
Yeah.
And the second team was some other lawyers. And the jury found him guilty right away.
Within literally 1 minute.
Wow. So how much time did he get?
So he got 18 years.
Wow.
And so it's such a great case. We could literally have 5-6 episodes on this one. We're trying to kind of put it all in about 30 minutes so you can share one of your cases as well. The girlfriend, fiance, wound up being adopted, but then his John's ex-wife challenged that in court, and the court overturned the adoption. So John wanted to have another child. So while in jail, he's been able to actually have another child. So he has a biological child now, a third.
They had a conjugal visit?
Well, again, that's pretty personal. I don't want to get into it, but there was a way that he arranged to have someone get pregnant with his baby.
Well, that could be a whole nother episode.
Right. So John does have a third child now, who now has access to a third of that big family.
How does the ex-wife challenge the adoption? She's no longer in the picture.
I know, yeah. She had a very powerful law firm. She also came from a very wealthy family. So, and it was a Delaware trust, and it was all crazy. It was very
that's a
heavily
fascinating
litigated.
case.
Yeah. So, but I need to share with you, once that verdict came back, the family begged me to, John and the family begged me to come back and take on the case. And there was an issue that they talked about the whole time where they thought that his blood was probably a 0.08, not a 0.16, but because they felt like the nurse had used the wrong size gauge of the needle when they drew his blood. The needle gauge was too large, and by using a gauge too large, it actually punctures the capillary into two, so you get a double result.
I've never heard that.
I know, instead of a really, really thin
They
gauge.
were convinced of that.
They were convinced of that. And I said, I've seen research on this. It's not medically supported, and it's been denied by other courts, and I will never bring a frivolous motion before the court ever. Right. And that's part of the reasons they went with the second defense.
Well, it's interesting you mention that, because that is a quandary that sometimes those of us who represent clients in criminal cases, and I'm sure this probably applies in civil cases too, where you have a client so convinced of something that could be crazy and could be completely against what the law is or even logic, and you just don't want to do it, because the last thing you want to do is stand up in court and argue something frivolous, something that's going to, lose your credibility over with a judge or a jury, and sometimes you have to part ways with the client if they're absolutely insistent.
Right.
They have a right to do it, but not with me.
That's exactly right. Yeah. And you wish them well.
You wish them well.
But they wanted me to come back in, try to argue an appeal and file this motion. I wouldn't do it. The second team of attorneys did, and they lost everything, including the needle issue. But a lot of people don't understand what happens to us when we defend people. I almost died representing John Goodman. He was housed for quite a while in the jail, and I would visit him, and I'd visit him in the infirmary because he had some medical issues, and I wind up catching MRSA in the jail. And for those of you that don't know, it's a skin-eating bacteria that people die from. It basically gets under your skin, and then it can spread throughout your entire body. And I woke up one morning after visiting him with 3 welts on my side.
Are you suggesting to our audience that jails aren't sanitary?
Oh, yeah. No, that's a fact, not a suggestion. There's signs everywhere in most jails that I've been in that say, wear gloves, keep clean. There's MRSA everywhere.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, but I had my whole career until then had been very safe.
Wow.
And, yeah,
that's
so
crazy.
I wake up one morning with these little boils, and I call my buddy, the plastic surgeon. I describe him. It's like a Sunday morning. I describe him, and he said, "Oh boy, it doesn't sound good. Get in to see me immediately." And I spent the next 6 months having to if you have to contain it, because if you don't, or if you're not really proactive, it'll spread.
And what jail was
body.
that for a plug?
Yeah. Don't go to the Palm Beach County jail.
Oh my God!
It's the same place we saw those spiders that we talked about in the earlier episode.
The brown recluse spiders.
Yeah, it's not very safe. So there was one fun part about that case where the reason he was in the jail, actually, John's house. So we got him out on house arrest, right? They said, as everyone knows, there's times where most cases you're allowed to be released on a bond, and a bond is an amount of money, and there can also be conditions of release. In this case, it was money plus he had to stay in his house, so house arrest. With house arrest, people often have to wear an ankle monitor. It's like a GPS system. Right. Police know where you are at all times. That way, if you start heading to the airport, they know immediately.
Right.
So John was required to have an ankle monitor, but his house was so big that they also required him to have 2 deputies 24 hours a day in his house, one at one end, one at the other, plus the ankle monitor, because they knew he had a helicopter, he had planes. He could land a helicopter on his property like I arrived the first day and fly out in 10 seconds, be in international waters, and from his helicopter to his plane. So they really, overdid it. And also, our viewers should know their tax dollars were not paying for those officers. He had to pay out of his own pocket for the 24 hours of 2 officers. Anyway, during this experience while he was on house arrest, his ankle bracelet breaks. And so that's when he got locked up when I was visiting him all the time. And he kept swearing to me, Guy, I didn't break it. I didn't break it. They thought, yeah, people break it, and then they try to flee. He's like, I'm telling you, it was a product error. It just broke. While I was showering, it just broke. And so that's why I was visiting him in jail for several days in a row to prepare for that hearing, which I actually argued and won. The judge agreed that it was a products liability issue and not that he intentionally broke it. Put the ankle bracelet back on him, a new one, and sent him back to his house arrest.
In the meantime, you get MRSA.
Yes, I catch MRSA.
Right.
And he spent about 6 weeks or so in jail while we were waiting for our court hearing.
Well, talking about bond,
yes.
I've got one for you.
You're Free to Go is sponsored by Lang Realty, South Florida's premier residential real estate broker. Whether you're buying, selling, or renting a home or condo, Lang's experienced realtors are standing by ready to help you. Contact one of Lang's top realtors today at 561-703-2427.
So this is one that wasn't famous, but fascinating. And I'll call my client Raymond to change the name.
Yes, some of these we have to change the name on.
Right. Raymond was a pilot for Air Jamaica. Raymond was also married to a woman whose father was a drug kingpin in Jamaica.
Oh, wow.
And Raymond brought in cocaine into the United States in the cockpit while he was flying for Air Jamaica. So what happened is he gets arrested and charged in St. Louis federal court.
So are you saying he landed in St. Louis and that's how he got arrested there?
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Okay.
Turns out the investigation the government did also revealed that cocaine was brought in Jacksonville. So he's charged in federal court in St. Louis on one occasion and charged in Jacksonville on another occasion. So we go out, we get a call from a family member to represent him. First step is to try to get him out on bond.
Of course.
Because, of course, if you have a client inside the jail, visiting them is difficult,
Yes.
as we know.
Yes.
It is, you don't have the same access.
You don't have the privacy that we really need.
You don't have the privacy.
Yeah.
And on top of it all, it works heavily on your client's head.
Yeah.
They get inside with everybody else and they start thinking that they know the law because everybody in there is a legal expert.
That's right.
And next thing you know, you spend half your visit trying to debunk things that they've heard.
Sure.
Or they say, well, why is this person getting out? Why is this person this happening?
I just heard the same case. And
Right.
the charges got dropped.
Right. So,
and you also don't want to catch MRSA.
right. And on top of it all, I mean, I do believe it's certainly in the government's advantage to keep people locked up pre-trial. More often than not, it's much more pressure for them to plead guilty.
That's right.
So in any event, my partner at the time, a former federal magistrate.
I just
Patty
want to
Kyle,
stop you for a second. The reason you made that statement, it's much for the pressure of the government. It's the pressure of the government because it's more likely to get them to plead guilty. People will do anything to get out of jail. That's the point here. So when someone's saying, I'm not going to get bond, just get me any offer. I'll take any offer. Just get me out of here.
Right.
And
Although
the
they
government,
often in federal court don't get out of there right away when they work out a plea.
But the government really does unethically, in my opinion, at times. Some prosecutors are better than others. Some officers are better than others, of course. But at times they do use that as leverage to try to get a defendant to break down.
Well, that's the first fight you have.
Yeah.
The first fight you have in federal court is always to get your client out because quite often the government's asking for pretrial detention. And if they can show by a preponderance of the evidence that your client is a flight risk or by clear and convincing evidence that they're a danger to the community. And danger to the community doesn't mean that they're going to go out there and kill somebody. It means that they have the means to continue with crimes.
Right.
And it's often blurred how the government makes that argument. But the bottom line is, a lot of times people are detained, and then it becomes very difficult, much more difficult to represent them. In any event, my partner at the time, former federal magistrate Patty Kyle, fabulous lawyer, and I fly out to St. Louis. We go in front of the federal magistrate. Patty makes this fantastic argument why Raymond should be released.
Wait, are you able to consolidate both cases? Because it was in two different states.
We didn't. But what happened is we got a bond in St. Louis, but that doesn't mean that he gets released right away, because there's a detainer from Jacksonville. So what happened is we contacted the Jacksonville prosecutor, and we convinced the Jacksonville prosecutor to go with the same bond conditions as St. Louis. So in any event, Raymond gets out.
Right, okay.
The first couple of days, we don't expect Raymond to call us and he's from South Florida. We wouldn't expect him to call us because, he's first getting readjusted. Well, then a week goes by, we keep calling Raymond, we don't hear from Raymond. 2 weeks go by, we don't hear from Raymond. And now we're wondering, where is Raymond?
Sure, we know he's a pilot, right?
Right, we know he's a pilot. Turns out Raymond flew the coop.
Oh boy.
Raymond skipped bond on both cases.
Is that what you call a jailbird?
Right,
like our logo here?
Right. But he wasn't free to go.
Not yet. Not yet.
So Raymond disappears. Now he's formally declared a fugitive.
Okay.
All right? Time goes on.
It's also very awkward when that happens. I mean, I've only had it once in my career, but I always feel, that my honor is, the prosecutors know we had nothing to do with it, but I always feel like it's a ding on us when a client flees, even though the prosecutors...
Especially when we're arguing to the judge that they can rely on him appearing in court.
Exactly.
Make all these arguments. Now we feel like not only did the client screw the government, they screwed us.
They screwed exactly.
Okay, because
we made representations to the court.
Effectively vouching for them without personally vouching.
Right.
In any event, time goes on. The case gets cold. And about 2 years later, we have no idea where Raymond is. We don't hear from him. He's a fugitive. If he ever gets caught, we'll see what happens. I get a call one day. My secretary beeps in and says, "Mark, you're not going to believe this. Raymond's on the phone." Now, when a client who has skipped bond, who's a fugitive, contacts you, the last thing in the world you want to know is where they are.
That's right.
Why? Because it's a continuing crime. It's not a privilege. There's no privileged communication.
And we have an ethical obligation.
Right.
They put us in a position that's,
So I get a call from Raymond, and now this became known to the government, so I'm not disclosing anything improperly. Where was Raymond? Raymond is in prison in Portugal. Raymond was caught on one of the largest busts in Europe history, and Raymond was serving a sentence in prison in Portugal. And Raymond said to me, now here's the other thing. Originally what the government wanted, they wanted Raymond to flip against his father-in-law, which of course Raymond wasn't going to do.
No.
He's married to the daughter, has 2 kids with a lovely wife. Last thing he's going to do is go against the family.
Maybe mother-in-law, but definitely not a father-in-law.
Right. So what happens is Raymond says, "So where are you?" Last thing I want to ask him, where are you? I'm in prison in Portugal. I don't care what it takes. I want to get out. I'll come back to the United States. I'll serve life. I don't care. I just want back in the U.S. And I said, well, Raymond, I'm sure the government isn't going to do you any favors. And he interrupts me, says, I'm going to cooperate against
Now he's ready to cooperate.
I said, why? Well, it turns out Raymond was in a cell. And I'll describe that cell later when I tell you what I saw. But Raymond was in a cell with 2 other guys, a 6x9 cell.
With 3 men in there.
3 men in there. A hole in the ground, which is the toilet, and a little spigot like a sink that water comes out. 23 hours a day in that cell.
You get 1 hour out for recreation.
One of those guys was being finally released. And meanwhile, the wife and the kids had moved to Portugal, to Lisbon, to be able to visit from time to time. By the way, the family was paying a lot of money monthly to the guards for protection.
Yep, that's.
So I'm going to tell you what that place looked like.
Sure.
And in any event, what happened is this guy leaves the cellmate, and he tells the cellmate, please, do me a favor, look after my wife, just let me know everything's fine, make sure she's protected. Well, he protects her all right. One day he finds out from the wife she's not coming to visit anymore. Why? She's leaving town with his former cellmate.
Oh, yeah.
And they're skipping away.
So that's why he's
So now
ready
his
to.
attitude is screw her, screw her dad.
Yes.
So what do? I call, the first people I call, I don't even call the prosecutor. I call the DEA agent. Great guy. He was very approachable. I told him exactly what was going on. And I said, I think that this is an opportunity for him to help himself and for you guys to get evidence if you want. Let's take it to the next step. Well, ultimately, a trip was arranged, blessed by the Secretary of State, arranged for us to go to Portugal. I flew with 2 DEA agents and an FBI agent.
So they want to go talk to your client.
They want to go talk to my client.
See how much you can
They
really
want
help.
to debrief him.
Yeah.
And they want to find out whether or not he's got anything of value that they could use. And if he does, then maybe the government will work its magic with the Portuguese government and get him back. All right?
This is what we promised at the beginning of this episode, that they're going to hear the inside, behind the scenes of the criminal justice system, the real lawyers who tried these real cases. It's the best.
So what happens is we fly over there, and we get there, and we hire a local lawyer there to sort of give us the lay of the land and get us into the prison. Why? Because we can't let anyone in the prison know that the 3 people who are accompanying me are agents.
Absolutely.
They've got to be lawyers.
Yes, they'd be attacked in a second.
His American lawyer is coming with his assistants and the other lawyers and his investigators
his team.
and all that. So we have to use the local lawyer to get us in. We're waiting around for 3 days, and we can't get in.
Wow.
And meanwhile, we keep trying to reach the lawyer. We can't reach this lawyer. He got paid a lot of money. We can't reach him. Well, we're having dinners every night. We're going out.
We're having a vacation.
A great vacation in Lisbon, but I can't help my client. Finally, we get in. I got to tell you, I've been in prisons.
We've been all over the world in prisons.
I've never been in a place this bad.
Really?
There was a movie back in the 60s or 70s called Midnight Express.
Of course, yeah, classic.
About, I think it was a Turkish prison.
Yes.
And the guy was caught with drugs.
Yes.
And it was brutal. Well, that's what this was like.
Right.
And it almost seemed like there was sewage running in the floor.
That's why your client wanted out.
And the cell, I saw the cell. It was so tiny. It was ridiculous. By then, Raymond had the opportunity. He was now sweeping around.
Okay.
So he was able to get out a little bit more out of the
He
cell.
had some privileges.
All right. So we go, we have our meeting, and they're totally convinced that Raymond can help them. And now they're going to do everything in their power to try to get him back.
Good.
So now we're hanging a few more days in Portugal, in Lisbon, waiting while they're contacting the Justice Department, they're contacting the State Department. And now I'm being told by the agents, everything is going to be done through the U.S. government to the Portuguese government to get him back.
Okay, so you're happy, your client's happy.
Everything sounded great.
Great.
Nothing happened.
Wow.
Nothing happened. Apparently, these things don't work out as easily as you think.
Yeah.
So ultimately, the warden kind of got the idea of what was going on. And he approached me on one of our visits. By now, I'm there well over a week.
Oh my God.
And I've eaten enough codfish and sardines for a lifetime.
Perfecting what, Spanish?
Oh,
Is
yeah,
it-
no,
yeah,
Portuguese. A lovely place, by the way.
Portuguese,
Lisbon
sure.
is a wonderful
Right.
place. Just don't go to that prison. I don't even know what's around there. But in any event, it's like Alcatraz.
Make sure my travel agent doesn't put that in my itinerary.
Right.
Yeah.
But what happened is the warden said, why don't you go speak to this particular lawyer? He may be able to help you.
Was that the one you had hired or a different lawyer?
No, he
Different
was
lawyer.
the former attorney general.
Okay.
Well, $50,000 later,
He's out.
phone call, we're on a plane back to the U.S.
Wow. That is great. Is that client still in prison?
So
or no?
wait. So he comes back to U.S. Here's the crazy part about the story. The FBI agent hated him. Absolutely hated him. But they bonded.
Over what?
The FBI agent's wife left for another agent,
There you go. Yep.
and they bonded.
Yeah.
So what happened is the cooperation continues. I'm monitoring it. And eventually we work out a deal. He pleads guilty. And now we're going to be sentenced in front of a federal judge. The thing you need to understand, the big difference between federal cases and state cases, in federal cases, you don't, it's a very rare, it's a pink elephant. It's a unicorn when you're able to actually bargain for a specific sentence.
Right.
You don't do that. It's ultimately up to the judge.
Correct.
You can work out some things along the guidelines,
A range
and
sometimes.
limit the number of
Right.
charges and the amount of time that you face, but ultimately it's still up to the judge.
Correct.
So we go in front of this judge, very tough federal judge.
And they typically do not like people who flee.
Right.
It's
But of course, the time has come for the government now to say how valuable my client's cooperation is. So what happens? We're sitting in the audience, okay? My client is actually sitting next to me. The marshals let him sit next to me on one of the benches. There's a marshal on either side, but they treated him very well. And the federal judge is handling another case. And I'm telling my client, don't worry, this judge is going to be good. He's very good about cooperation. He's going to give us the sentence we want. The judge is trying to get the attention of his clerk. And his clerk is sitting below. You know, judge is on a bench up here.
Yeah.
Then there's lower benches, and the clerk's sitting below. And he's trying to get the attention of his clerk, and he can't get the attention of his clerk. So he picks up one of these plastic pen holders or paper clip holders,
Okay.
and he throws it at the clerk.
No.
But he doesn't hit the clerk in the shoulder. He hits the clerk in the forehead,
Oh,
and
my
the clerk starts bleeding
Oh.
right there in the middle of the courtroom.
Wow.
And
That
my
I've
client
never
turns
seen.
to me and he says, "That's the judge that's going to be kind to us?"
Did you say that out loud? Or like the,
No, to me.
Okay,
He
good,
said that
good,
to
good.
P.S. It worked out fine.
Yeah.
Actually, the FBI agent who hated him went sidebar and spoke on behalf of my client to the judge. And I swear, it's at points I thought tears were coming to his eyes.
Really?
How
Yeah.
well he described the ordeal he went through in Portugal, how much he helped the government. My client wound up getting credit for the time he served in Portugal. And by the time he was sentenced, I think he had to do maybe another year, and he got out. Both cases
And so then he was
fled the country.
Yeah, fled the country. You bring him back. He gets another year, and then he's
And
free
so
to go. I guess.
sometimes you get your results through ways other than winning a trial.
Right.
And that's the story.
Yeah.
But a crazy
Crazy-ass
situation.
case.
Crazy ass case.
Yeah, that's another fun episode as always with you,
Yeah.
Mark. I always love them. I think next time, I'm not sure what you're going to talk about, but I have a really interesting case about a 15-year-old who was involved in a drive-by shooting. and how the case had a major turn of events in it to result in a unpredictable outcome that no one will see coming. Can't wait to talk about it.
Right. And I've got talking about pilots.
Another pilot case?
Another pilot case, but even crazier than that one.
Oh, good.
I'm going to be talking about a Colombian Air Force captain who was caught bringing cocaine into the U.S. on a Colombian military jet at the airport in Fort Lauderdale, where the Colombian military had a purchasing base, and they would fly C-130s back and forth buying goods from the U.S., American military supplies.
Right.
And he was one of the pilots.
All right.
And as a result of that whole thing, I wound up representing him. And it turns out he portrayed this with a defense that caused me and the prosecutor to go down to Bogota and take depositions that were sanctioned by then Alexander Haig, the Secretary of State, and the Colombian government at the U.S. Embassy, because it's the only place in the middle of the 80s that they could protect us. We're riding around in armored cars like you see in the movies.
I love this detail.
And after
Great.
we took a couple of depositions, the prosecutor and I were asked by the Colombian government to leave the country.
Oh, you got to leave us on that
And
note.
the
because
reason why is wild.
All right, can't
And
wait.
then we had a trial, and it's just a wild story.
Okay. All right. There's a lot to talk about in the next episode.
Yep.
But until then,
You're
free to go. Down Low Investigations is a sponsor of You're Free to Go. Behind every great criminal defense attorney is a great private investigator. That's why Mark and I use Down Low to investigate cases all over the country. Down Low can help you too, whether you're running a background check on an employee or running a background check on a blind date, or let's say you need someone followed or some other type of investigative work conducted. Down Low is the way to go. Call Download Investigations at 561-843-1806. Everything expressed and discussed in this episode are the opinions and experiences of attorneys Guy Fromston and Mark Nurek and their guests. All ethical rules are complied with. Attorney-client privilege and confidential information is not shared or released during these episodes, and names, dates, locations, and other identifying information may be changed to protect confidentiality. Topics are embellished, and none of the statements made constitute legal advice and should not be considered or relied on as such.